More remakes are on the way from Activision's catalog, Sora's Deconfirmation from Smash is actually legitimately fake, and Phil Spencer doesn't see Nintendo or Sony as competitors. All this and more on Wumpa Time. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wumpa Time. My name is Kenny Gaye, and Shemp's not here. Boom, 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 boom. Sadly, Shemp could not make it to today's episode. It is unfortunate that he could not make it with us because I will just be alone today, and you guys just gonna hear my thoughts in my voice. So, yeah, that's gonna be a different style of show. But anyway, he will join us for next week. He got tied up. He's not sick or anything. There's nothing wrong. He just got tied up, and we all live busy lives, so it happens. But we're going to move on to the quick news. Final Fantasy VII exclusivity has extended to April 2021. So if you didn't know, Final Fantasy VII is being remade, and it's coming exclusively to the PlayStation 4 for 1 year. Now, allegedly, it's supposed to be also be coming to the PC a year later. Now, the original launch date that was fairly set in stone was in March. I believe it was March 20th. However, for some reason, they delayed the game 1 month. And that means that the game is coming out in April. But because it's coming out in April, that means the exclusivity deal that they signed with PlayStation also got delayed 1 month. So Final Fantasy VII can be accessed by others by whichever console that Square Enix chooses by by April 2021. Now, what's interesting about this is the fact that Square is still going with exclusivity with PlayStation, and it kind of just shows how powerful PlayStation is really pushing for some of these games, because nowadays there's not as many exclusives as there were back in the PS1, PS2 days, and the fact that PlayStation was able to get a 1-year exclusivity from Square Enix, which is now considered a third-party developer, is very, very interesting. This is the same thing that happened with Crash Insane. If you remember, it had the 1-year exclusivity deal, and honestly, unless it went to like PC or Switch, it really did choke the Xbox. It was really competing against Xbox to make sure that they had the better RPG or the better game overall that stayed exclusive to them. So the sales for Crash Insane for Xbox last time I checked were still extremely low, but they were quite high for the Switch because of portability. So because people who own a Switch and also own a PlayStation will probably buy Crash Bandicoot again, so that they can be able to actually play it on the go. So that's why there's that big, massive difference. Speaking of the Switch, we're going to be switching over to a new exclusive that was originally only for Switch that's going to go to Steam, of all places. Daemon X Machina, I believe it's called. Yeah, Daemon X Machina is going to be going to Steam. Now, if you don't know what that game is, Daemon X Machina was a some giant battle bot game, almost kind of like Gundam. And I remember seeing the trailer for it, and it was exclusive to Switch, and everyone was kind of like, that's kind of interesting, but it's exclusive to Switch. How is that going to work out? Because it was a lag fest. It was not optimized very well. It had a lot of frame rate drops. And it looked like a game that didn't belong on the Switch at all, or exclusively to the Switch. It looked like it was a port from another really big game. However, they are now bringing Daemon X Machina to Steam, to the PC. So I think it's finally going to be sitting at home perfectly where it's supposed to be. Having it exclusive to Switch, especially that style of game, I think was a bit of a mistake. But because it also kind of killed the game in general in terms of advertising and marketing, because I didn't hear too much about it. It kind of just like sailed off into the deep dark abyss. You didn't hear too much about it. Like, it was released and then that was it. So I feel like this is almost like a take two on it, and hopefully that the port will be able to bring some revitalization back to that game. Up next, we got our good friends at EA. Our good old friends did something amazing. Sip the coffee. EA has decided to jack up their prices of their games on Steam. So EA has finally started to return back to Steam as like their home place, because they had like their own, I guess, Steam game download system set up, kind of like, you know, the Epic Game Store, Ubisoft's Uplay, etc. And EA had their own, but I think they're starting to go back to Steam in general because they're probably finding more revenue through that. Well, turns out EA has decided to take almost every single one of their games, I'm going to move the mic a little closer, almost every single one of their games, and jacked up the prices. And I'm not saying new games, like old games. Like I'm talking Dragon Age Origins, like that came out for the PS3 and Xbox 360. By the way, a fantastic game. They increased the price by, I think, about $5. Now, some of these price increases are okay. It's like $1 or $2. But then you get some prices increases like I believe it was SimCity. Yeah, SimCity almost doubled in price. EA, are you serious? These are games, they went through almost every single one of their games, every single one, and raised the base value. Now, this might be a way for them to create that terrible scheme where they up the prices 2 weeks before a massive sale happens, where they say, oh yeah, look, you get the game for 50% off, when it's more like 35% because the initial price was jacked up. And EA, that's not cool. That's not cool, especially on older games, especially on games that are like really, really old and almost no one's buying anymore. Just to jack them up for the sake of doing it is just, come on, man. Come on, seriously? Is that your thing? Is that what you think is a good idea? People caught on to it. That's why I'm reporting it. It's hilarious. And last and certainly not least of our quick news, we have had a Crash mobile game leak. So if you haven't been paying attention to my channel, or if you're more of a Shemp listener, and that's cool too, Crash Mobile, a mobile game for Crash, has been announced. Now, there's a lot to take away from that. There is a lot to take away. The big thing is that there's a new design. We're not sure if that's going to be the final design or the direction of the final design, or if it's just going to be the mobile game design. But Crash Bandicoot is going to be bringing a mobile game to the phones. Now, of course, this can be canceled because they haven't officially announced it yet. It's just been leaked. And it's a runner. And there's been a lot of mixed responses. If you were to go to Reddit, if you were to go to Twitter, if you were to go to my comment section, it's a war. It's nothing but war. People are hating it. People are loving it. People are mixed. It's all over the place. And it's kind of like, some people are like, oh, I absolutely hate it. It's like, well, okay. And then some people are like, I absolutely adore it. And it's really mixed. It's not like the Sonic design, where like the Sonic design was universally hated. This design is like the epitome of mixed. Now, the big thing that's cool though is that this is an early design, and it's also a mobile. So the render that they're using is probably a lower graphic fidelity. I'm interested to see what the game looks like on the PS4, the PC, or even the PS5 and Xbox Series X or whatever. I want to be able to see what does it look like on those, because what we saw was likely a mobile render, or not even just a work in progress render. So it's interesting. I've been covering it. If you guys want to check it out, I made 2 videos talking about it. I'm going to be making 1 more video talking about it. And how it will be likely be successful to the franchise as a whole. So now we're going to be moving on to the main chunks of our podcast. I was supposed to say episode, podcast, whatever you want to call it. So, recently we had the Activision quarterly call, and there was a bunch of news reported from that. So, one of the big things is that World of Warcraft had doubled their player size ever since they released the classic mode, which, if you don't know what that means, World of Warcraft has had many expansions that has changed everything, every single expansion, new heroes or new races, new areas, other areas get destroyed with, new areas budding from it. And rules are changed, spells are taken away, are added. So every massive expansion, stuff like that happens. Well, World of Warcraft Classic was announced, and it was all the way to bring the game back to the way it was on the very first expansion. And man, did it doubled the main player base. Not only that, Warcraft 3 Reforged, they said that they are struggling with it, and that they are dedicated to fixing it, making sure that everything was okay. They already released a patch for Warcraft 3 Reforged, and they're going to be releasing more patches to get it fixed. Sip the coffee again. But the big thing to take away, especially related to this channel, is that two things. Was that King is going to be making more content based off of a catalog from Activision's IP. So, as what we just said, the Crash mobile game just leaked literally right afterwards, and it all makes sense that King would be making a Crash Bandicoot themed mobile game. We'll probably also get a Spyro themed mobile game. We'll probably get we could get there's so much potential for different mobile games. We could get a StarCraft mobile game, we could get a Warcraft mobile game, because it seems like King is going to be turning to, instead of just making their own IP like Candy Crush or in the Candy Crush Saga, I believe it was, that they make, they're going to be turning to Activision's IP and making more content from that. But the other thing that they said, which I do want to talk more about, which is, I'm confused because no one else really can come up with too many answers, but Activision also said that there's going to be more remakes and reimaginings, so that's the wording, was remakes and reimaginings from Activision's catalog of IP. Now that opens up a Pandora's box. So Activision has a lot of IP. They own a lot of studios. I don't think people really grasp how many studios that they've owned or IPs from studios that they own. So what's happened is that in terms of studios, Activision buys studios, and then what they'll do is that if the studio's not doing well, they'll defunct them. And what that means is that they will buy a studio. They'll see how it's running, how it's going, where its finances, what games does it own, and what's the experience like. And then what they essentially do is that they see how the studio runs. If the studio is having a hard time running on its own, whether it be management's all messed up or something's wrong, what they will actually do is that they will shut down the company, shut down the name, take the IP that the studio owns. So, for example, Neversoft always worked on the Tony Hawk games, which we'll get to in a second. Take the IP, take the main members of those studios, spread them to their other studios, and then shut the company down. If the studio runs well on its own, like Toys for Bob did, Vicarious Visions, etc., then they just maintain and they just get past different IPs that they got from all the other people. This is what happened when Activision bought, I believe it was Vivendi. It was a merging. They didn't shut down Vivendi, they merged with them, or Vivendi. I always get corrected on how to pronounce that. But anyway, Activision has a vast catalog of games. Massive amounts of IP, because I believe they have currently running under their banner. I'm just to name off the top of my head, I might be able to get them all, is Vicarious Visions, Sledgehammer Games, Toys for Bob, Raven Software, Demonware, which doesn't make any games, they make the C++ coding for the online play. There's a few more, I'm trying to remember them. Raven, Toys for Bob, Vicarious Visions, Beanox, how could I forget them? Demonware, and there's Sledgehammer Games. There's two more in there that I'm missing, but they own about 8 studios that are active. Then they sold about 12, like Neversoft and a whole bunch. I'm not even going to start listing those off, but they own the IP from all of them. So for them to be doing more remakes and more reimaginings, it makes me think, what is it that they're going to be bringing back? There are games like Guitar Hero that they could definitely bring back. There is Skylanders. I don't think they will, though, because Skylanders is associated with Spyro, and Activision has been proven to not want to have complications when it comes to IP. For example, back with First Four Figures, they actually were trying to make a Spyro, a Legend of Spyro First Four Figures setup around the time when Reignited was being made, and Activision declined the setup because they didn't want people to get confused with the branding. So it's a branding confusion issue that they want to maintain, that they are trying to hold to. So it depends on how it all depends on how Activision sees Skylanders, if they see them as a game separate from Spyro, or if Spyro is an integral part of Skylanders. That will be seen to be determined. Sorry if you hear any of the kids crying in the background. It's the morning, and they're kids. So anyway, but there's also games, like I said, you got Guitar Hero, Skylanders, but then you got also interesting games like Tony Hawk. Now, the reason why Tony Hawk is so interesting is because Activision lost the rights to Tony Hawk. But recently, there was a rumor by an apparent insider or leaker, or someone who has insider information, named Sabi. They had said that there was big rumors going around that allegedly there was a Tony Hawk prototype style game being passed around internally at Activision. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. I've lost a lot of hope in Sabi ever since the recent Smash leaks and all that stuff. Is he or she right? I don't know. But it's interesting that they would be doing that, because the thing is, it wouldn't be a Tony Hawk game. It can't be a Tony Hawk game because they lost the rights to the name. So they would probably just call it Pro Skater or whatever. They would have to come up with a new name for it, but it would be essentially the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater, just with all the branding of Tony Hawk removed. Now, I don't know how that's going to work for also licensing of music, because there's things that expire, things that go up in cost, because that was a big thing about the original Tony Hawk, is that had all this licensed music that a lot of people really liked listening to. So there's Tony Hawk. There's also another prediction that I have, where you got Warcraft 3 Reforged, you got StarCraft Remastered. So I feel like that they're going to be going next to perhaps Diablo. They might be doing Diablo 1 or 2 remastered. That's just a theory on my end, because Diablo 4 right now has still got a bitter taste because of what happened with the mobile game with Diablo Immortal, where it was a botched announcement. People were very, very, very upset, and that's where the meme "Do you guys not have phones?" was birthed from. That's where it was born, was there. So to see a Diablo remaster would probably be a way to try to get the fans to say, hey, sorry, here's a remaster of a classic that'll hold you over until Diablo 4. But there is so many possibilities for games to be remade. It baffles my mind. It baffles my mind that Activision has decided. And then when at one point, when there was a previous quarterly call where Activision literally said, hey, we're not just interested in remakes and remasters, we're also interested in expanding on what we have in our current library of IP. So to go with that, I do not think that this is by any means a remake for Crash and Spyro when it comes to like the Legend series. When it comes to the Legend series, when it comes to the Legend of Spyro series, or when it comes to the Crash Bandicoot series, like the Crash the Titans and stuff, that or Twinsanity, those will likely not come back. The way it was worded was that they would be looking at other games, and that it's not going to be Crash Twinsanity remake or Enter the Dragonfly remake. That's likely not going to ever happen. So we'll see. We'll have to see what they're going to be doing from their Activision's catalog of games. So hopefully that they be able to remake some interesting classics. Speaking of a classic theory that's been going around, ever since like the start of Fighter Pass, like I don't know, since Fighter Pass almost from the Joker, from the very first Fighter Pass for Joker for Smash Bros. Sora has been a highly requested, and a character that would totally make sense to the Smash universe. Well, again, this is something that you have to be careful with, because there have been many reports coming out and saying that Sora going to Smash has been deconfirmed. Now, everyone was looking, oh my gosh, and reading and understanding, oh my gosh, this, that, and the other, how, this sucks, why did it get deconfirmed? But the source of it was a podcast. And when you listen back to the podcast and where they actually talk about Sora, they literally said, I don't know if Sora's going to be in it. That's what they said. They said, we're not sure if Sora's going to be in it. And then for some reason, all these articles came out of nowhere. And saying that Sora's been deconfirmed. Now, this is what happens. What happens is that one bigger news site, whether it be, whatever, decides that they're going to go a little bit light on the sourcing for a story. They're going to go with a paper-thin source. Now, when it comes to reputation, some of these sites have been known to discover new stuff. Like, for example, Nintendo Lifestyle had the Spiral Reignited leaked to them for the Switch beforehand. So that site now has a reputation. Well, and there are thousands upon thousands of sites that have a type of reputation like that. But when these sites are usually ran by multiple people, it's not just one person that's writing the stories. Usually it can be ran by a dozen people. And one person one day could decide to go a little light on the sourcing, but still want to get good clicks, and draft up a story that will get people to click, even though the source is not that great. Now, some people would think that the story would just live and die on the site. Turns out that doesn't happen, especially when you are a site that is reputable. What happens is that other people mirror your story so that they may get clicks too, and they source you. And what happens is that you start becoming the source. That lightly sourced article starts being sourced from other articles, and it starts spreading like wildfire because people read it and they think it's true. They don't check the source, and then they mirror it on their site. And it's no. You can't take a podcast saying he may or may not show up and use it as a deconfirmation of Sora not showing up. So a bunch of YouTubers by the name of HMK, who is a really nice guy from what I've heard, has been kind of coming forward and trying to deconfirm and shoot down all of these articles because they're fake. It's not real. It's not truth. There was no deconfirmation that happened. It was just I think it's possible that he could be in it, but I'm not sure. I don't know. They thought that there were other fighters that were likely going to be more likely in the game, but not Sora. But he wasn't sure. So again, this is like what happened, was it last week or the week before? I can't remember, where people were starting to run with the story. Now, luckily the story didn't spread, but PlayStation Universe is running with the story that Sly 5 was going to be coming back, and that there was a rumor that the next Spiral game would be coming back, the details on how the game works and stuff. And it came from a Reddit post that had no sources, that had no backing whatsoever, and then the Sly Cooper one came from just a random mock-up case that popped up on a site. You gotta check your sources. If you're a YouTuber, if you are a purveyor or a reader of news who's trying to be on top of everything all the time, you have to be able to check your sources. Check the sources of the article. Make sure what they're saying is true. The article should just be a summary of what happened, and then the source itself should be the actual information. Please, please, please check your sources before you go running with an article. And last and certainly not least, this is a big one. Hold on. Sorry. Nose all of a sudden starting to get clogged. Phil Spencer, the person who's currently running Xbox over in North America, doesn't see Nintendo or Sony as competitors, but sees Google and Amazon. Now, there's a lot to say here. All right, hold on. Let me take a sip of my coffee to prepare myself because we got some tea to talk about. Here we go. Okay, so Xbox doesn't see Nintendo or Sony as competitors. So this says a lot about what Xbox is trying to do. If we look at what Google's trying to do, or the Stadia is attempting and flailing and failing at, I mean, there's a joke here. I'll get to it in a second, and a point to be made. We can see that they want to go to no longer a console and no longer buying games from a store, popping into your console and playing it. Or they want to be a digital exclusive company. They want games streamed to you. They want games as a service. They don't want to be buying games physically. And part of the reasons why they want to do that is because buying games digitally gives them a much bigger cut than buying a game physically. So, as we know, Xbox recently has been focusing a lot on Game Pass, has been focusing a lot on their memberships and their online play. That's what they've been focusing on. If you get Game Pass, you can get any Microsoft exclusive game day one when it comes out. And they've been seeing people sign up like crazy. You can even pay, I think it's like $20 a month, and you get Xbox Gold and you get the Game Pass. So it's a great deal, and it's amazing, and they're killing it right now. They're killing it on that end. But them coming forward and saying that they don't see Nintendo or Sony as competitors, I feel that this is a really, really bad take on Phil's end because of one industry in total, and that's the third party industry. So you got three different parties. You got first party, second party, and you got third party. So for a long time, a first party game is a game where the development studio and the console maker, and everyone is all the same. It's all first party. So for example, an example of a first party game is Spider-Man right now, right? Spider-Man is a first party to Sony because Sony owns the rights. Sony owns the consoles, therefore they own the games. Now there's second party, which if I remember correctly is when a game that's contracted by the company, by a company for it to be exclusive to one console, but the company that worked on it itself is not first party. So I believe that's second party. I might be wrong about that because second party is kind of like a gray area. And then third party is completely unrelated to them in terms of Sony or PlayStation. Completely unrelated. The third party approaches them and say, hey, can our game be on your console? And 9 times out of 10, if it's from a AAA studio, it's yes, your game can be on our console. So there has been a rise of third party developers because it gives you freedom. It allows you to be able to have your games sell on Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation. These companies have to pay out a huge margin to, like, let's say Sony Santa Monica, to Insomniac Games, because their games are only being released on one console. So for them to feel it like they have to stay interested or intrigued with PlayStation, they have to compensate for not being able to sell any games on the Xbox or Nintendo. So Phil Spencer saying that Nintendo or Sony is not competitors to them is disingenuous to both Sony and Nintendo. I don't see how he could say that and be able to think that in general, because I understand that they are going to be pushing for games as a service, but as long as third party games exist, Sony and Nintendo will always be your competitors. Always. They always will. They always will be competing with you because people are going to be buying their games and their consoles and affording their stuff before yours are. And them turning and saying, oh yeah, our competitors are Amazon and Google, especially Amazon, when Amazon is just a fledgling, they've barely even started yet. And then you got Google Stadia, which is just wallowing in its own feces because it's so bad. It's kind of, I don't know, I think Phil kind of did something that's almost disingenuous. He kind of lowered the bar as if like, oh yeah, the Sony and Nintendo, these giants that had massive success, aren't our competitors. We're going to pick on the smaller people. We're going to pick on the failing and the fledgling. So, like I said, I don't even think I've seen a game come out from Amazon, or maybe I've seen it advertised, but I don't even think Amazon has their gaming platforms fully set up yet. And here they are declaring that their competition is something that has barely even started yet. Now, it's kind of funny that Phil turns and says that because the Nintendo Switch has passed the Xbox One in sales, even though it's been out for literally half its lifetime. And the PlayStation 5 has dominated the PlayStation 4 has dominated in all senses the Xbox One, due to its definitely due to its poor startup and its lack of exclusives. And for Phil Spencer to turn around and kind of say like, oh, they aren't our competitors. Yeah, they are. They are your competitors. Whether you want to accept that or not, they are your competitors. Now, could Google and Amazon also be your competitors? Absolutely, of course. I'm sure PlayStation is keeping an eye both on Google and Amazon. I'm sure Nintendo's doing the same thing. But to turn around and to shift your focus being like, oh, well, we don't see them as competitors. When PlayStation sees you as a competitor, that's why they haven't announced their PlayStation 5 pricing yet. They've been waiting to see what the Series X price is, which honestly, I'm getting a little bit ticked off at PlayStation because PlayStation has not been releasing almost any information about their new console recently. And it's February. It's February and the game's coming out in the fall. We don't know what the price is. We don't know what all the launch games are. We don't know a lot. And they're going to want to start doing their huge marketing push very, very soon. They have to. There's been a lot of selling points that have been leaked or talked about, which is PS5 backwards compatibility. There is constant. It's been told that the PS5 will be backwards compatible with the PS4, but there's been massive amounts of rumors saying that the PS5 can be. Can run games from the PS1, PS2, and PS3, which is a tricky one. The PS3 one is the tricky one. Not the PS1 or PS2. Those are fairly easy. That can run in almost any emulator fairly fine. It's the PS3 because of its cell-based architecture. So, I think Phil needs to wake up and realize that PlayStation is still... PlayStation and Nintendo are still competing with them. They may, we're not competing with them. They're still competing with you. There have been rumors that Nintendo's been trying to pull Scalebound from Microsoft's grasps. There's been rumors of all these different things of them wanting to pull games out of the hands of Microsoft. They want to pull old games, new games, whatever, because they want them. Nintendo and Sony are hungry for them. But this does open up something very interesting with the fact that Phil Spencer is turning and saying that they don't see Nintendo and Sony as competitors. And if they stay true to that and they go fully digital and the Xbox Series X is the last box that you buy from Microsoft, there is now a vacuum that opens up for a new studio to step in and start developing consoles and doing physical stuff. It's not Stadia at the moment. Stadia has not been able to pull up their socks and take care of what they've been doing. Stadia has been crashing. It's been doing really bad from day one. It was advertised weird. It was declared weird. It's under a PR nightmare, and I'm shocked. I'm even shocked that they haven't announced that it's been done yet. So Google, I don't think has filled that vacuum yet, but with Xbox stepping away, there could be a third studio that could step in and start game development, right? At one point, Sony was looked at weird because it was Sony that made the PlayStation. They were just a random tech company, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the PS1 was one of the top-selling consoles of all time. So at this point, any tech company could step up. Maybe Amazon was thinking about making a physical version. I heard that they were going more the digital route, but maybe Amazon can nuzzle in there. And then Amazon could really cripple PlayStation by literally doing, because Amazon has a shopping platform, they could literally make a physical console that stands on par with PlayStation. And then when you buy games that any third-party games through Amazon for the Amazon physical console, you could get it for $10 off. Right, you could do or get downloaded directly. You can get Amazon could do a bunch of these bonuses to be able to try to ensnare and try to kill and compete with Nintendo and PlayStation. And a big thing you can do that for is pricing. Right, you can hook up your Amazon Prime and then get the same thing as Xbox Game Pass, because most people already have Amazon Prime. Right, a lot of people already have that, and then you can say, hey, if you have Amazon Prime, you now get game streaming, and then it's like, oh, I want to game stream. I don't need to deal with Microsoft anymore. there are so many opportunities now if Xbox is bowing out as the third competitor between Nintendo and Sony, which I still don't think is a good idea, and I still think it's disingenuous, the fact that just because it feels like because the Xbox One didn't sell well and didn't do overwhelmingly great like the Xbox 360, it feels like they're moving the goalpost as to who their competitors are, so that it makes them look better, because they are ahead on both Google and Amazon when it comes to their game streaming services. It just feels like if they're saying that Nintendo or Sony are not their competitors in the future, then why is it they're actually making the Series X? It doesn't really make sense to me. I think that they should have, if it wasn't their intention to be competing with both Nintendo or Sony, they should have just released the Lockhart, which is the smaller version, and then just push the game streaming as hard as possible and be able to have it. Yeah, you can still play games physically, but if you want that HD high quality streaming right to your device, you have to use the Game Pass. So I don't know. I feel like Phil Spencer is missing the point. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comment section below. So that's all the time that we have for today's episode of Wumpa Time. I'm sorry that it was a solo episode. But if you guys enjoyed it, make sure to follow us on YouTube. Follow Canadian Guy A with an extra H, unfortunately, until I can get that fixed. Go follow Shemp over on his channel as well. We are also on SoundCloud, Spotify, you name it, we're everywhere. If you can plug your ears into it, we're probably there. Thank you all so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you on the next episode of Wumpa Time. See you later.